We are now live, everyone.
Well, good evening, and thank you for joining us. My name is Judy Peterson, and I serve as the Public Information Officer for the Fairfax County Park Authority. We know we have quite a few folks joining us already, and we welcome you. Tonight, we are here to review plans and to seek comment about the proposed conversion of existing platform tennis courts at Wakefield Park to pickleball. While we know that there is great interest in the pending release of our pickleball study that looks at the impacts of pickleball's continuing popularity and its expansion, tonight's meeting is really focused on the project at Wakefield Park. I ask you to consider that as we take public comment, and let's try and maintain that focus. I can assure you that upon the release of that study later this summer, there's going to be ample opportunity for public comment on the broader topic of pickleball recommendations and facility provision across the county. Let me start by introducing some of our guests and park staff members this evening. Let me start with Braddock District Supervisor James Walkinshaw. We also have Marcia Pape, who is with his office as well. We have Acting Park Authority Director Sarah Baldwin. Deputy Director Amy Vosper is joining us. We also have Park Planning Director Stephanie Leadham, Anna Bentley, who is with the Planning Branch Manager, and Ryan Stewart, who is the Chief Long Range Planning Manager. I also want to introduce a couple of new faces that you haven't really seen before. We have a lot of new staff members, and I want to take a moment to introduce two folks who are integral members of the staff relative to this project. Kurt Lewis is our Park Operations Division Director, and he has been here almost a year. However, he has about 30 years of experience in park operations, and he has a passion for managing and maintaining parks and open space, and he also happens to be a lifelong resident of the county. I also wanted to introduce Karen DeVore. Karen serves as Construction Maintenance Project Manager for the Park Operations Division, and she has decades of experience as well managing maintenance projects such as athletic courts, parking lots, roadways, and trails. I wanted to call them out because they're intimately involved in this project. There's others here that I want to mention that include our tech team doing all the magic behind the curtain, Hannah Kress, Kristen Bratt, Don Tubell, Rebecca Rolfe, and others who are ensuring our ability to hold this virtual meeting tonight. One thing I was asked to tell you, if you're having any issues in terms of connectivity, you might want to just refresh your screen. That will help you in terms of, making sure that you're able to participate tonight. In just a little bit, I'm going to explain how you're going to participate during our comment period, but we have a few housekeeping items to take care of. One thing I want you to be aware of is that we are recording this meeting, and we will place that recording online following this meeting. The meeting is taking place virtually tonight due to the pandemic and in the interest of safety for the public as well as for our staff members. We ask that you mute yourselves during the meeting and hold questions and comments until the end. And I see there are already some questions and comments in the chat box, and that is perfectly fine, but we're going to do the presentation first. We will accept questions and comments in a couple of ways tonight, either via the chat feature or via audio comments. And all comments and questions, again, we would ask you to be germane to the topic at hand tonight, which is Wakefield, and to keep those comments relatively brief. So we're going to get started, and it is my pleasure to welcome to the virtual podium Braddock District Supervisor James Walkinshaw. Supervisor.
Thank you, Judy, and thank you to Sarah and the entire Park Authority team for pulling this meeting together, and to all of the residents out there participating. I'm very excited about this project. I had the opportunity to try my hand at pickleball a few months ago at Wakefield Park, and I lost pretty badly, but I had fun doing it. Played against some pretty experienced players. I know that pickleball is one of the fastest growing sports in the country, and one of the fastest growing sports here in Fairfax County and in Northern Virginia. And I know the Park Authority, through The survey that they've conducted is committed to exploring all opportunities to expand pickleball courts across the county. But tonight we're talking about one exciting opportunity, and that is the first 2 dedicated pickleball courts in the Fairfax County Park Authority system. And when I had my chance to play pickleball and talk to a lot of pickleball players and advocates, one of the things that they really asked for were dedicated courts. So they weren't put in the position of having to compete with folks playing tennis, creating sometimes stress and tension between the 2 different sports. And we have a great opportunity to put that in motion here in Wakefield Park. So I hope you'll study the presentation intently, give us your feedback on it. I think we do have an opportunity to create a nice little nexus for pickleball there with some seating between the 2 courts, and we want to get your feedback and thoughts on how that can best work. But I'm very appreciative of the Park Authority for their responsiveness and looking at this project, and appreciate all of you being here tonight to participate in the meeting. Thank you, Judy.
Thank you very much, Supervisor. And Marcia, thank you also for joining us. Now, please, we want to welcome our presenters, Stephanie Leadham, Division Director for Park Planning and Development, and Kurt Lewis, Park Operations Division Director. They have a brief presentation that's going to outline the Wakefield Park project. So if you could bring up the slides, please, Hannah. We'll go ahead and get them rolling in just a minute. Next slide, please. So again, tonight's meeting is to inform the public of the Park Authority's proposal to convert 2 platform tennis courts to pickleball courts. The pickleball study, which we've heard so much about, is going to be released a little bit later this summer. Future meetings are going to be held, and they will address the potential of additional conversions and new pickleball courts in Fairfax County. And now the virtual floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Judy. Next slide, please. This slide is for those who may not be familiar with the site. Many of you probably are. This is an aerial shot of all the courts. Courts 12 and 13 are circled in red. Those are the ones that are proposed for the conversion. What you really can't see here is some of the constraints the location has. There is some elevation changes at 12 and 13 and a stream that runs behind it. The court's life expectancy is about 10 years. Next slide, please. Here's a picture of the courts in disrepair. I guess this picture really doesn't do justice of all the issues we have with the courts right now, but just to say that they are in need of repair or renovation. Next slide, please. Again, the courts are in disrepair. We've looked at this court. The little bit of background, staff observations indicate that the paddleball platform tennis courts 12 and 13 are underutilized. When in use, we do see pickleball on them, and then occasionally there's some soccer being played on it as well. Again, the conditions of 12 and 13 are in disrepair. Before we do any repair or invest in any renovations, staff would assess the use and need for facilities and amenities. Next slide, please. It is this assessment that has allowed us to what we think is a great opportunity to address change in our recreational needs. Pickleball players seek dedicated courts at Wakefield. Currently, only courts 9 and 10 are lined for both pickleball and tennis. And I could say that courts 1 through 11 are heavily used and scheduled by tennis. But again, we know there's probably going to be a lot of questions out there about pickleball in general. So upon completion of the pickleball study, we will make additional recommendations of other courts countywide that may be repurposed. Next slide, and Stephanie.
Good evening. I'm Stephanie Lito. I'm the Director of Planning and Development for the Fairfax County Park Authority. I'm going to share with you the potential layout that we are proposing for the pickleball courts on the two courts 9 and 10, which are the current paddleball courts. And as you can see, there's sort of a path that extends down between courts 7 and 8 and 11 that extends to the edge of the two paddleball courts. And then we're proposing some shade trees and seating as well adjacent to these two courts. As Kurt mentioned, there's some stream valley and contours sort of to the off to the right of this layout that are also present in conditions that impact how we access these courts. But you will see, and I'll show you on the next slide, that the pickleball courts fit very nicely into these two existing paddleball courts. Next slide. So just as I mentioned, the dimensions of the existing paddle tennis courts are perfect for aligning the new pickleball courts. The dimensions of the pickleball are 20 by 44, and the existing court is 30 by 60. So it fits very nicely within that area, but we recognize that there are also ADA access issues that we would have to address as well in terms of transitioning these courts and repurposing them. Next slide. And so it's, you know, a pretty straightforward concept and proposal that we're making to you tonight. We are looking for public comment, which will extend through May 8th. So 30 days from this evening, and those comments can be addressed to parkmail@fairfaxcounty.gov. For next steps, we will confirm the design of the new pickleball courts and any required ADA improvements for accessibility. And we would be looking to start construction in late spring or early summer, which aligns nicely with the court lighting project that will be beginning in late summer. And then, as many of you are aware, we're engaged in a pickleball study, and the draft findings will be released to the public in June. So as you can see, there's a lot of energy and interest around this topic, and we're excited to be able to do some dedicated courts here at Wakefield. And so I think we're going to open up for comments next.
Thank you. Thank you both. Great presentation. It's time to hear from you now, and now some of the instructions on how to proceed. And they sound a little bit complex, but I will repeat them as needed. Also, you will find information, I believe, in the chat box to help you through it. So here's how you join in the conversation. For the duration of this meeting, we'll be accepting comments and questions in the chat box. Feel free to provide us with your email address if you would like to receive updates about the project. That email address will be available to us, but will not post publicly in the chat box. Should you wish to dial in and speak to us, we know we have some folks on the phone. Please call the number which is located right above the video at 855-925-2801. You can enter the code also right above the video at the code is 9304. Okay, once you dial in, they're going to ask you to press star for more options. And if you want to join the speaker queue, you're going to press option number 3. And that's going to pop up into the speaker queue, but it will still allow you to listen to the meeting. Now, at this point, you may want to step away from your computer because you'll be joining us, but there'll be a slight delay and it may be a little bit confusing. Plus, we will hear ourselves twice through your phone. So when it's your turn in the queue to speak, we'll let you know that we are ready for your call, and the pre-recorded voice will prompt you that it is your turn. When you do get your turn, please give your name, if you would, for accessibility requirements, and make your comments. And we would ask everybody to limit their comments to 3 minutes, please. We'll try and give you a 30-second warning about when you're nearing the end of that time. Remain on topic. And again, those how-tos are posted in the chat box, and I will be glad to go over this again if needed. So let's begin, and I'm going to alternate between some of the chat questions, and then I'll take some audio. And our goal is to get to as many as possible within reason. And we ask you again to focus on the comments at hand. So I'm going to start with Randall in the chat box. There are so often empty tennis courts at Nottoway Park. Why not have one court designated as pickleball, even have times where pickleball is permitted and other times when tennis is permitted? This would generate more use of those facilities. Thank you. And I'm going to ask Ryan, who is the author of the pickleball study, if he'd like to comment on that.
Thanks, Randall. That's a very good question. My name is Ryan Stewart. I'm with Long Range Planning with the Park Authority, and as Judy mentioned, I'm heading up the pickleball study. We are looking at Nottoway and other courts throughout the county for potential pickleball locations. We essentially left no stone unturned. As far as that's concerned, we're looking at both courts that can be repurposed, areas that can be converted into dedicated pickleball courts, as well as new facilities that may have been planned that have not yet been built yet. So I don't have anything definitive on Nottoway just yet, but please stay tuned because we will be looking at that in our pickleball study.
Thank you. And I'm going to give you this next one too, Ryan. This is from Jeff. He says, why can't a single tennis court be made with lines for pickleball and rollaway nets for the court? If 12 and 13 are to be repurposed solely for pickleball, are any of the surrounding trees going to be cut back? Is there any way to connect the two courts in one fenced-in area? Let's see, is that going to be, actually, Karen, I think that might be one that you could answer better.
Okay, good evening, Jeff. I believe we spoke on the phone not too long ago, and I have some follow-up answers for you. I did remeasure the area, and as you saw from the aerial, there's not enough space to put a full-size tennis court in where the two pickleball courts are now. We need to have them oriented kind of north to south for sun. You probably know since you're a tennis player. So we're going to keep the orientation the same. That being said, we do need to keep the service road that runs between 11, 12, and 13. So the size, the footprint we have there is what we have to work with. We can make two pickleball courts inside one fence, and it'll actually save us a little bit of money on fencing. And as far as the trees cut back, I put in what we call internally as a work order management ticket for our forestry division. So sometime between now and the start of the project, they're going to go assess the tree health, and they'll either limit back or cut down the dead ones. We're not going to wholesale cut them down, though, just for the sake of this. We have enough room to do this project without cutting down the trees, but they will remove the hazardous trees.
Thank you. We have some folks on the phone I'll take in just a minute. I'm going to take one more from the chat, and this is from George. Will there be future plans to convert some of the tennis courts at Mason District Park to pickleball courts? Ryan?
Thanks, George. That's a good question. This is Ryan again. I just wanted to reiterate what I said before about we were looking at all parks, including Mason District Park, Nottoway, and others for some potential pickleball courts. And so we will be looking at that in our study coming forward.
Now I'd like to go to the phones. If I could get a little technical assistance. Caller, can you hear us?
I can.
Would you just give us your name and just please ask your question?
Yes, this is Michael Grace, and I will try my best to stay within the 3 minutes. I'd like to talk about what we know, what we don't know, and what we should agree to do. What we know is that the courts, the tennis courts we have in Fairfax County were built because people wanted to play tennis. And I just want to remind you that a lot of people still like to play tennis, including increasing numbers of them. The problem with if you convert a tennis court to pickleball, you can never again play tennis on it. So the reasonable compromise, which I know you've pursued to some extent, is dual stripe the courts to allow both courts, rather than permanently eliminate the ability to play one of the courts on the sport, one of the sports on the court. My second point is what we don't know. I'm old enough to remember when the hottest sport going in the United States was racquetball. You couldn't get a racquetball court. How many people do you know today who play racquetball? I don't know that many. So we don't know what's going to happen with pickleball. Only the future will tell us what will happen. So what I would like to advocate, and I'd ask you please seriously consider this, is let's not repurpose, let's not convert any more tennis courts to pickleball, because, again, you lose the dual use of the court. If we really need more pickleball courts, and maybe we do, then we should build pickleball courts just like we have built tennis courts. So those are my comments, and I would ask you to consider them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well done. And I think you were just right on, spot on time-wise. I appreciate that. All right, we're going to go to the phones again. Do we have our next caller? And if so, please state your name. Caller, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes, please
Okay,
give us
hi.
your name.
Yes, my name is Efren. I'm a resident Fairfax for over 25 years. I have played on that steel platform probably a year or two ago. When you repurpose it, my question is, are you going to build the tennis court on that steel platform, or are you ridding that platform and building the court off of the ground? If you leave the steel platform, I noticed when I played there, it was unacceptable. The bounce and the sound, it was very annoying. So that is a consideration that you might want to take a look at. Perhaps I think it would be best is if probably get rid of the steel platform and make it on ground, because I know many of my players, when we choose a place to play, and there are many places to play, the bounce and the floor condition is very important. So if you go inside a gym, for example, we got laminated basketball courts, is flat spots. It's unacceptable to many, especially the competitive players, and they like the tennis surface. That's a highly preferred surface. My other comment is if when you do put up lights, consider LED lights. I've heard many positive comments about LED lights being installed up. I think it's up in the northern Chantilly area compared to the incandescent lights. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments, Ephraim. We appreciate it. Would anybody like to comment, either Kurt or Karen, regarding whether that platform? Karen, please.
Okay, good evening. Rest assured, the platform tennis courts will be removed. We have a quote from a company in Connecticut who's going to pay us to remove it. They'll go ahead and take the courts out of there. Then our in-house staff is going to remove the footers and grade the area that's under the platform. So we're going to start new phase. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Hear that?
All right. We're going to go to our chat right now, and I know our staff will let us know if we have any more folks on the phone. Carl DeBella, I'm very much in favor of new dedicated pickleball courts anywhere in Fairfax County. However, if construction of 2 courts at Wakefield Park would delay by 1 second what is really needed for Fairfax County, which is a set of at least 6 dedicated outdoor pickleball courts at a central Fairfax County location, I would prefer that the 2 Wakefield courts not be built. Anybody like to comment on that, or is that just one to consider perhaps? Will this delay any other type of facility being built?
So we do have plans to build, and Ryan, please chime in, to build additional dedicated courts at Hogue Park. And I believe construction starts on those courts in the next couple of months and will be available, I believe, by the fall. Ryan, I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add to that.
I believe you're right, sir, as far as that construction schedule. And also I would add that, this project is being conducted concurrent with some other construction that's going on at Wakefield as far as the lighting is concerned. And so it's really being handled outside of the pickleball study. So once we have the pickleball study results, that's going to be informing our decision making for other courts within the county. And so there's really no delay. It's on 2 separate timetables.
Judy, you're on mute.
I have to say, they mute me from behind the scenes sometimes. It's not always my fault. Sally Smallwood writes, I too would like to see a dedicated pickleball outdoor facility in Fairfax County. There are plenty of unused tennis courts that could be converted. Thank you for that thought, Sally. Peggy writes question, Will there be fencing around the 2 pickleball courts? Karen, is that a yes? That's a thumbs up? There will be. Okay. We'll go
Yes,
with
they'll
that.
be fenced.
All right, thank you. Let's see. Let's move back down here. Patricia Murray Ferris writes, I am certainly for dual purpose courts, and I think that marking tennis courts to allow for pickleball is very inexpensive and an efficient solution. However, having dedicated pickleball courts for the growing pickleball sport, especially among older citizens who want to keep fit and enjoy an inexpensive social sport, should definitely be considered. We can start with Wakefield, then go on to other Fairfax County parks such as Nottoway, etc. Thank you for recognizing and addressing the wonderful and fun sport of pickleball. Sincerely, Patricia. Very nice. Thank you. All right, Anonymous. Anonymous writes, while I have played platform tennis, I can't find enough folks to use the platform courts regularly in the winter. I'm all for building 2 pickleball courts in the platform tennis space. My 2 concerns are that the good wood of the platform tennis and other material can be salvaged, and that some construction has minimal environmental damage. Karen or Kurt, any comment on that?
Again, the company from Connecticut, which is called Riley Green Mountain, they were the ones who 10 years ago resurfaced the platform tennis courts. They're going to pay to remove them, and I'm guessing reuse them. The only disturbance we're going to do is pull the footers out of the ground and grade the existing area. So we're not going to expand the footprint that you see now of disturbed land out there around 12 and 13. Did that answer your question?
She's on the chat, so I believe that it does. We have Anonymous, a comment that says, save the green space. And we're always for saving the green space. Mike P. writes, glad to see this plan to replace platform courts with pickleball, but are you also evaluating building new courts from the ground up other than Hogue? For example, could new pickleball courts be constructed on the land between tennis courts 7 and 8 and the parking lot? Thoughts? Ryan?
This is Ryan again. I can tell you that we are looking at options to construct new courts from the ground up. We are looking at places where we have planned for courts that have not yet been constructed. That's a relatively quick way to get more courts into the system without having to rely on something like a master plan update for a park, which would add additional time to the timeline. As far as your question on the land between tennis courts 7 and 8 in the parking lot, I'm not too familiar with that site, but perhaps one of our operations folks could answer that for us.
It's probably not big enough, and I believe some of it would probably fall in the RPA there as that stream comes through there. I would have to check the map, but that's probably why. It's not very big, believe it or not, and then the RPA would be an issue.
All right. Rick asks, is the fencing around the existing platform tennis court going to be replaced or maintained? It seems to be in pretty good shape, minus some minor repairs, and I think it would save costs to keep them. Park Ops?
Again, all of that is scheduled to be removed if this gets approved. That company, Riley Green Mountain, will take it and do, whatever it is they do with it. So maybe they'll reconstruct it somewhere else. But again, the entire platform tennis courts will be removed, minus the footers, which the in-house staff will remove themselves.
Thank you. Jeff A. Writes, while dedicated pickleball courts are great, I would prefer dual-use courts with lines painted for 2 pickleball courts for each tennis court. I don't think separate, dedicated courts are needed, but they are appreciated. I see no reason why this cannot be done to every court in the county. It's a cheap way to increase usage. Ryan?
Thanks for your comment. I can definitely understand where you're coming from as far as the need to provide for both, opportunities for pickleball on dual use courts, but also looking at the need for separate dedicated courts. It's one of the we are looking at both options as a way to balance the needs between pickleball and tennis. But I certainly appreciate that comment, and we'll be sure to address that in our pickleball study.
Another comment from Carl. If building of 2 dedicated pickleball courts at Wakefield is combined with a project to renovate courts 9 and 10, please mark at least 4 pickleball courts on 9 and 10. Okay. Any comments on that?
I would say something to consider.
Okay. All right, I'm just going to check with my staff at this time. We have some callers that are connected, and you would need to press *3 if you want to speak. So we're going to need just a moment to see if you can navigate the system. I'll remind you, press star for more options. If you want to join the speaker queue, then you have to press 3. Okay. We don't have any more comments in the chat box, but we'll just give just a moment to see if any of those callers come through. I also want to remind you that we are taking public comment on this whole issue until the 8th. So that's 30 days from now. And you can send us that public comment at parkmail@fairfaxcounty.gov. Hannah, do we have any callers yet that have come through?
It looks like one is trying to connect, if you want to hang tight for a second.
Sure, we'll hang tight because we want to give everybody an opportunity to be heard. I do want to tell everybody how much we appreciate your participation tonight and the fact that everybody has just really stayed on topic. I assure you that there will be opportunity to parse every sentence in that pickleball study when we do that public meeting. But in the meantime, let's see. Caller, can you hear me?
Hi, my name is Carol Fagnani, and I'm a pickleball player, and I play at multiple sites. And I just think it's really important to have at least 4 courts available for pickleball players. 2 courts is totally inefficient and a kind of an insult to pickleball players. And I recommend dual-purpose courts that gives both tennis players and pickleball players the flexibility to play.
Thank you very much for your comment. We appreciate it. Anybody'd like to comment on that, or we'll just take it under consideration, I think. Appreciate it.
Carol, this is Ryan. I just wanted to just respond to your comment real quickly that we certainly do recognize the need for community-based drop-in play at our pickleball facilities. We've definitely heard from the pickleball community through our surveys and emails and feedback that we've received. So that's definitely a need that we're missing. And so we are looking at potential options to have 4 more courts at certain areas within the county. So look forward to that in our pickleball study.
Thank you. The other thing I'd like to add is that I've been a Fairfax County resident since 1984, and I am really, and I don't mean to insult anybody, but I'm kind of taken aback that Vienna Falls Church, Fairfax City, has been an extreme advocate for pickleball, and that I kind of feel like Fairfax County is like kind of picking up at the 4th run on this. So anything you could do to support pickleball, we appreciate it. Thank you so much for your support.
And thank you very much for your comments. I guess the only thing I could add is that it's always the need to balance. We have many diverse interest groups and needs, all competing for somewhat limited resources at the time. But we do appreciate that comment, and we will consider it and keep it in mind. I have a question here. What's the name of the park, from Sally? And I'm not sure if she's referring to Hogue. Maybe we talked about that earlier, or Wakefield. I'm presuming Hogue is H-O-G-G-E. I think that might be the question that you're asking. Hannah, are there any more callers trying to get in?
Not that I'm seeing right now.
All right. And we have no other comments in the chat box. So I would just offer up another opportunity for anybody.
Judy,
We have a few more comments in the chat box.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Just, okay, here's another one. Will the county provide portable nets for each court? Anybody want to take a stab at that
I
one?
would say we're piloting it at one location to see if it works. We have purchased portable nets for Roundtree, and we're going to attempt to try to see if it works by locking them to the existing fence. So the concern there is that they're not very durable, and if they're vandalized or broken, we are in the business of buying nets all the time, and they can be quite expensive across the county. So we're looking at it as an option, but we haven't fully decided on it.
Thank you. We have another comment now from oh, go ahead, Sarah.
Karen, I don't know if you want to talk about the nets that will be on the courts that are converted. So they'll be permanent nets that are there, correct?
Yes, that's correct. For the platform conversion, if approved, there'll be permanent pickleball nets on those courts, so we won't need to move those back and forth.
Thank you. Michael Grace writes, weighing in about dual striping courts to accommodate both tennis and pickleball versus dedicated pickleball courts. Please remember, dual striping preserves the ability to play both sports on a court. Converting a court from tennis to pickleball permanently eliminates the ability to play one of the sports on it. Please also remember that thousands of Fairfax County residents love playing tennis, even though they are not necessarily participating in this meeting. Good points. Good points. And Lori writes, I play on dual purpose courts. It is important to have very pronounced lines painted on the courts to keep pickleball lines clear from the tennis lines. I love, in caps, pickleball and appreciate the county providing the courts. Keeping the lines painted and lights on all the courts would be great. Thank you for those comments. And let's see, this is from Judy, a fine name indeed. Since Roundtree Park courts will be repainted, can additional pickleball courts be painted on the other two tennis courts? If not both, at least one. And I think we did address that, but Karen, would you like to take that again?
Yes, it is going to be color coded this year. We did run out of good weather, and the plan is to repaint the pickleball courts as you see them now. So we'll have one court next to the parking lot with a pickleball court on either side of the net. I'm going to defer to Ryan if we're going to add even more pickleball courts to that. It's not a financial decision, it's more of a planning decision. So if Ryan has any comments on that, I'll leave it to him and we'll go from there.
You know, we talked about this fairly extensively once we were looking at placing the pickleball courts there at Roundtree. So I'll have to go back and check my notes and get back in touch here with the caller. But I do know that one of the things we look at is you know, kind of every use within the park, the availability of parking, the ability to support larger groups. And so we did take all of that into consideration when we were looking at Roundtree Park.
Thank you, Ryan. All right, no more comments at this time. Any callers?
No callers.
All right. Well, then I'm going to give anybody else who would like to have a last word, so to speak, supervisor or anybody else before we conclude tonight's meeting.
No, Judy, just thank you and the Park Authority team and all the residents for participating tonight. I think we got some good comments and some good feedback. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And again, I remind everybody, our comment period is open until May 8th. Don't be shy. Let us find out, you know, what's on your mind. And again, we thank you very much for being as courteous and as on topic as you were. Please be safe and be well, and good night.